Cool. Well, why don't we start recording and jump into the Q&A session. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Water Cooler Chat, where we talk about all things Livepeer, whether it's delegating, orchestrating, broadcasting, transcoding, or anything to do with the Livepeer network. We are here to ask questions and get answers. So we have an agenda ahead of us. We have a Q&A session with one of the Livepeer core developers, Evan. The last time we had Evan on, I believe, was over a year ago. It was November of last year. November? It was just over a year ago we've had him on, so it's well overdue to have Evan on here to do a Q&A session. So, Evan, do you want to start us off? I guess the people watching the recording will probably have missed what you just said. So why don't you give us an in-depth kind of introduction into who you are and what you do with Livepeer.
Sure. It sounds good. Stop me if I go too in depth or get off track. So again, my name's Evan. My role at Livepeer title is analytics engineer. It has evolved over the years, and I'm sort of somewhere in between kind of a data engineer, data scientist, and analytics data analyst. And I do kind of a little bit of everything at Livepeer for the company. So I started. It's been about 2 years now, and we have essentially just built out internal analytics infrastructure. So some of that stuff is kind of just what you need for running a company, helping understand costs, helping understand customers, that sort of thing. But then there's also been some fun stuff with developing products for Livepeer in general. So one of the things about the time that I talked last time, we were working on our viewership engagement product, which is now has been launched but also matured, and so it's come a long ways since then too. So in the last year, we've really developed that product. And so if you're not familiar with viewership engagement, or what I mean by that is measuring views, watch time, playback performance, that sort of thing. One of those core things. So if you're familiar with MUX data, that's probably the best analog on the market. What we've done is kind of an inspiration for a lot of our work. But so I developed and orchestrated that, or designed the data flows for that, and then worked with some of the other developers to work on the API and stuff. But a lot of that data was from my design. So that was probably the biggest thing in the last year that we've worked on, despite all the other, all the other stuff that we've done. And yeah, and then I think the other really interesting thing that you guys might find interesting is I've been working on some AI prototypes. So, for example, I've been working on this product for potentially looking at smart clipping or developing clips that uses some AI models to figure out like top 10 great suggestions for clips, transcriptions for videos, those types of things. So previously, before Livepeer, most of my roles were more data science, machine learning heavy. So in the last year and a half, it's been sort of data engineering, database, data analytics. And so it's been fun to get back into some of my background and get into some of the more machine learning type stuff. But anyways, I think it's probably a good place to stop, and I'm happy to take questions, elaborate on anything y'all find interesting.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great introduction, and a lot to go through there. So that's amazing. So I'll start with just a couple questions that come to the top of my head. First off, is most of your work done around Livepeer Studio? Is that kind of where your main focus is, or is this available to the open source kind of like public of the ecosystem?
Yeah, great question. Most of it is through Livepeer Studio. Some of the viewership engagement stuff that we hope to move over to the open source side. It's one of those things of like, what was the best way to get it out the door the quickest? And so we developed some client side capturing that type of thing. But we are interested in how do we over time move some of those things over to more of like Catalyst as a core program. The smart clipping stuff, some of that will probably be a Livepeer Studio product powered by orchestrators, if and when that happens. Like right now, it's very much still prototype running locally on my computer, that kind of stuff. And then almost all the other analytics stuff is pretty heavily Livepeer Studio using our users database, our streams and assets, that kind of thing. So it's sort of building off of the data that Catalyst produces, but with the Livepeer Studio context.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned viewership engagement metrics that you are you've built out for studio and these kinds of things. Can you tell us exactly what metrics you've implemented and kind of the response to those key
Sure.
things?
Yeah. Well, and I just thought of something to kind of elaborate and bridge the gap here. One of the things that's interesting about Catalyst is that it doesn't really produce data. It has lots of logs, Prometheus metrics, and things like that, but it has no like a state machine. It has no like Postgres database attached to it that really captures things. So that has kind of been one of those. It kind of assumes a Livepeer Studio model on top of it that captures all of that data. So when it comes to the viewership metrics, what we do is we capture this on the client side. It does send metrics, so it uses the WebSocket connection to send those like the metrics to Catalyst, and then Catalyst we had to kind of and then also write it out. So you have something that assumes an input, and then it also assumes an output, and never stores any of that kind of inherent to Catalyst. Which, anyways, so and the things that we're capturing, so we have, let's see, we're trying to remember these off the top of my head. There's kind of a what we call like an engagement, two engagement metrics, which are just views and watch time. And then we have performance metrics, which are buffering ratios, or what I call it rebuffer ratio, rebuffer percentage, the percentage of time a user spends buffering. We have time to first frame, amount of time it takes to receive the first frame. Then we have exit before starts. I really like this one. It's kind of one of those. It's people who've left before any video played. So you have a video that starts. I think it's one of those kind of unsung heroes of the metrics. And then there's one more. Oh, then just error rates. I feel like I'm missing one, but that's off the top of my head. Then we have some dimensions, such as there's geographic dimensions that stops at like a state level. So we don't collect all the way down to the IP address, but we at least like buffer that stuff through the proxy gets captured. So we get down to like which would be like a state if you're in the US, or like a province, region, that kind of thing. We have country, continents, and then the device type, which comes from the user agent. And that's, what kind of phone you're using. Is it mobile, iPad, a tablet? Is it a computer? That kind of stuff. Is that it? That's the bulk of them. And so we can capture that. And then we have an API that then aggregates those things, and you can call it. Which is
Oh,
also, and I think one of the more interesting things too is we also capture, um, or at least have a space. It hasn't been a widely accepted thing or adopted, but we have this idea of viewer IDs. And then on the studio side, we also have an idea, a concept of creator IDs. And our vision for that was allowing people to have like user IDs or like wallet IDs or something like that, and enable this idea of creator metrics. So being able to have creators own their data and be able to see what users are also interacting, and giving them like kind of a more, rather than having that, or YouTube doesn't give you any type of insights, right? Like it's views and it's very arbitrary, but this allows us to pass that data on to the creators themselves, and then the creators can also interact with the users as well too. Anyways.
yeah, it's fascinating. So it sounds like there's quite a few things you are gathering, right? So what I've written down is
Mhm.
watch time, a bunch of performance metrics, obviously, basic information about the device you're using, and so that you can better understand maybe hiccups or glitches or whatever. But so, and then you also mentioned like what location you might be in, like your like based on your IP address. So how far does that go when it comes to capturing demographics? Like is this something you want to go down the path of capturing things like gender, age, interests, or is there still this kind of like off limit approach where we don't want to go down that road because it's kind of like Web3, or is that in the working? Like where do you go from here?
Yeah, we've definitely taken a pretty conservative approach to it. And so it doesn't get any more granular. So the proxy server, like Nginx or something like that, actually processes that for us and stops it at the state level, or in the US it'd be a state. Might call it a province or something like that in other places. So it's fairly. There is also a geohash. If you're familiar, it's a way of indexing. It's like a grid, a type of way gridifying the world, and so it's also fairly high level and roughly comes out to about a state. So we're pretty high level on that. And also, there's also the GDPR concerns too that we also taken a pretty conservative approach to as well.
Yeah, because definitely different countries have. I mean, this is a huge issue with things
Mm.
like the big tech companies in the limelight around what they collect, and so does Livepeer Studio plan to go down that road, or like you said, it's really just a conservative approach, and have it fit within kind of like this open source kind of, like, even though Studio is not open source itself, but this ability to release things in an open source way if needed.
Yeah, definitely more of that. I expanded on that. There's also companies themselves have the option to build things into their own platforms. Right. So down at the infrastructure level, we have not built this really detailed metrics into the system, and yeah, I think I feel much more comfortable with that as well. And we do have, I think what is unique is like I mentioned, the viewer IDs. That was sort of intended to be like a wallet address or something. Again, assuming that the platforms themselves are handling that consent handoff and all of that. But we thought that's kind of a cool, I think it's a cool Web3 way of interacting with your users in a unique, in a sort of revolutionary way. Imagine if you're a creator. I always had the idea of like a reverse Spotify Wrapped idea where you could have content creators and you could see your top users or your top viewers and engage with them in a new way. Maybe you're giving them airdrops or unique access to different streams or whatever it is. But in that pseudo anonymous way that the users have consented to. So you don't have to know. It's like, instead of taking the big tech creepy way of stalking them until you have every bit of information that they don't even know you have. I like the more explicit consent model where you're engaging with your users in a new way. But
Right. So instead of saying, "Hey,
yeah,
listen, I know you're going to have a baby in 2 months, here's this ad."
yeah,
It's like, "Hey, I know you've watched me for this long. It's pretty obvious, right? And here's a token of appreciation for being a viewer."
you got it.
And it's like, "Well, okay, you're tracking how much how much I watch you, but that's pretty obvious, right? You still don't know who I am, but you know that, this, the privacy may be still intact while also still getting rewarded for engagement, right?"
You got it. That's the intuition.
That's really really cool. Yeah, definitely. And then I would also assume the GDPR and these other more granular stalking approaches of collecting data, that could be done more on like the actual like app side, right? Like the client
Hmm.
side of people that want to handle that, and then they can like the infrastructure side of Livepeer would be more hands off. It just gives you
Yeah,
the basic data around the actual infrastructure and what's happening, and leave the spying, if you will, to the developers who
yep,
want to build that relationship with their platform users, and are willing to you know do it in their own fashion, right? And following the laws of their own country, and things like that. So it sounds like Livepeer Studio is more conservative, hands off. We're going to give you the tech data, but nothing beyond that. Is that sound about right?
yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Hmm, very cool. I'll pause it there for a sec. Does anyone else have any questions on viewer engagement metrics and kind of what's going on there? If not, we can always wrap back around to the topic. But any last? I want to move on to this AI prototypes topic that you brought up. But any last comments, Evan, on around this viewer engagement stuff that you've been working on, or anything you want to
Nope.
leave us with?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you have any more questions on it. So.
Very cool. Cool. Okay, let's move on to these this concept of you mentioned the words AI prototypes, and so things like smart clipping and transcriptions. Tell us a little bit about what these are, and what are the tools. The actual AI modeling. Is this something that you're building out? Are you using other tools to do this work? Give us a little in-depth preview as to what that looks like.
For sure. Well, and to be clear, this is definitely it's the sexiest thing, but it's also like the least practical at the moment. It's kind of been something I've been working on for fun. Transcription's probably the most serious thing that we'll I think that'll be on our roadmap in the near future. But the smart clipping is sort of an implementation of that. Can I share my screen? Is that on here?
I
Is that like a
believe
thing?
you can.
Let me try it because I did this the other day where I have like a little Miro board where I can kind of show what happens.
Do you have a button on your desktop saying you can share
I
screen?
do. I see it.
Okay,
Yeah.
just try to
Let me
click
do
it.
this real fast.
It's funny enough, you're not a stage
There it is.
moderator, so I
Miro.
don't know if you can or not. There you
Coming
go.
up. Let's see
Yep.
if it works.
Yep, it did show up and then it disappeared.
Oh, let me try one more time.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, I can just talk through it. It's fine. Miro.
And
Cool. There we
hey,
go.
we're good. Yeah.
You see it?
Yeah, we can. Here,
Yeah. So,
let me make it full
so
screen.
the smart clipping idea was essentially we use the transcriptions. That assumes, and there's a lot of really great open source. So all of these are using open source models. I say that I am using openAI at one point, but mainly out of convenience more than anything else. So it goes through a simple process. You start by transcribing the video, and then I use two different paths to essentially create scores. So when you transcribe it, it's going to generate transcriptions based off segments. So similar to the way we transcode the video, the audio is getting cut up into segments, and they can be anywhere from like 3 to 6 seconds long. For this, I'm using, I think it's called Faster Whisper, and all of this I'm also using Python APIs for it. So I'm using Python. It's like a Python script that I've written. So you transcribe the video, and then essentially we're going to measure each segment two different ways. One is through sentiment analysis. So I kind of describe this as how interesting is that segment? And then also topic modeling, which is going to answer the question, how relevant is this segment? So the sentiment analysis is pretty simple. This has been around for a long time. And it was actually one of the things that got me most interested in data science whenever back, I guess it's been probably 10 years now, when sentiment analysis first came out, people were measuring the emotional sentiment of tweets. It's a really common thing. Is it positive or negative? Now they've developed to where you can also tag specific emotions, whether it's anger or excitement, that kind of thing. For this one, I just did a positive, negative, and the score itself is a measure of how positive or how negative. And so I'm using that score as a proxy for the emotional charge, you might say, for a segment. And then for the topic modeling, I use OpenAI to summarize the video. So you give it the whole transcription, and then I ask OpenAI, like, what is this video about? What is this transcript doing? And then I can ask. There's a concept called topic modeling that, if you're familiar with deep learning models, you essentially like vectorize the words, and then you can put those into, you measure the difference between words. And so you tokenize it, you get rid of filler words, that kind of thing. And then you can measure the differences between words. And so then they use that to generate topics that are a collection of words that generate something. So, for example, I tested this out. I made a video of me talking about, I think it was GitHub Actions and how you might schedule jobs, Python jobs. So it was neat to see the topic of that one was Git. cron, I think bash, like that, and a few other things were the core words there. So it works really well. And then you can measure the top of each segment, and then you can use cosine similarity to measure sort of how far away each segment is from the topic itself. So you're generating a score between -1 and 1. So now we have, for each segment, we have how emotionally charged is it, and then for each segment, we also have how relevant it is to an overall topic. And then I really simply, for this little prototype, I just roll through each of the segment. You say like, I want 30-second clips. So that's 5 segments. And then you sum up the score and you take the segments, the windows that have the highest score. And then you can save the 10 best of those, say best 5, redo it. You want 45-second clips. Okay, the scores might be a little different. Yeah, and then you have clips there. This works really well for things like uh, podcasts or something where people are talking about something. You can get the most interesting 30-second topics. I recently tried on some longer videos, so there's definitely some bugs to work out. Like I said, very much at a high level prototype, and I also have some really cool ways I think it'll be fun to improve it. If, for example, like right now I just sum up the topics, but that's a way of choosing segments. But we could actually use another machine learning model, like layer on top of that. And so we actually have a reinforcement type model that's like learning which segments users actually want. And so you could, in the dashboard, if they download one, well, you're telling the model that that's what you want. These are the videos that I want. And so you could use those to feed back in and say, give me more of videos like this, and teach it how to choose those segments a little better than just a simple sum or score. I did also realize that OpenAI, I have a problem with summarizing transcriptions whenever they get too long. So, for example, I tried to do one with one of our, as a prototype, but the video was an hour long, and OpenAI did not like that. So then I was trying to figure out how to shorten those, get those summaries to work for longer videos. I don't know, lots of little bugs like that I need to work through. But all of that also just, again, it assumes transcription is working as well.
Is the OpenAI, is that uploading it into the OpenAI like servers and using their backend, or are you using like a local LLM for handling this for the topic modeling?
Okay, so both in some ways. So the asking for the summary, I am using their API. So I'm sending OpenAI the transcription, the transcript, and then they send me back a text response.
Right.
The
Okay.
topic modeling and the sentiment, so the BERT topic and the sentiment analysis, those are both Hugging Face models that I downloaded locally and just use the Hugging Face API to locally interact with them.
So if you could upload a transcription into a local LLM, then you might not have the issue of the duration of video, right? Is that
It's true. It could be. It depends. I mean, even some of the Hugging Face models, they have what are called token limits, and so which are essentially a rough idea is how many unique words are in there. So the longer it gets, they have maximum token limits, which is roughly analogous to how many nodes are in the neural network. So sometimes they get too big, and or I'm using the small version, which is another thing I'm really excited about for my graphic cards to come in and get things set up, because I really want to try out some of these LLMs. Right now, my just laptop can't handle them, but being able to send some of these things to a local GPU would really allow things to speed up. So
which GPU
yeah,
are you
there's
getting for
definitely
that?
aspects. I have two NVIDIA 1060s coming.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I mean, I have there's a lot of work left to do. I have to build the whole thing, so it'll be a while.
Definitely. Very interesting. So it sounds like you've got this model of transcribing the video and then using that transcription to build sentiment and get the topics using OpenAI and local LLMs and produce this entire concept of smart clipping. So this idea of getting the most powerful point of a video to the forefront of what someone might be interested in viewing, right? Is that kind of like the idea behind it?
Yeah, I think a good use case for this would be someone who maybe you have a podcast or
A water cooler
I don't know
chat.
yeah, exactly, like, and you want to promote it, so you're looking for little things to throw onto Twitter or TikTok or whatever you use, and kind of helping you. So there are some products out there. Opus Clip is one that I was checking out, that they do this, and they also, so one of the things they also do is add the transcription on, like, they burn it onto the video itself, so you get those exciting transcriptions as the video runs. So those types of things are possible too in like post processing. So
That is fascinating. Yeah, and so
yeah.
is this something that is being where? Okay, so I'm just reading it. It says Livepeer AI smart clips. So where does this fit into? Is this a service? Is this a product offering with Livepeer Studio? Is that it kind of the way you want to go with it?
It's a great question. I don't think we've thought that far ahead. This is something that's been fun for me. I think transcriptions probably be something that would, it's probably the easiest to talk about. And yeah, I do think that'd be something that orchestrators would do, and the that studio could offer to people. Probably some type of product. I think so. Probably the smart clips. It'd be a product that studio or somebody else can develop and offer. Yeah. So
How much how much GPU power is required to do these different stages, so transcribing and then doing these other bits of it?
yeah. So a lot of that depends. So the transcription, I think, is I was able to do it very quickly on my CPU. So that they really, the Whisper model, a lot of, and it's gotten out there enough that people have really worked on it and got it efficient enough to use. So I would say very little for that. The other modeling is, it's tough for me to say without ever trying it myself, right? I've been running them all locally, but I have to use the small. So Hugging Face would have, if you look at some of their models, like the Burnt Topic, they'll have different levels of models, like small, medium, large, and they'll show you how much RAM they take or something. And those, it depends on how much data they were trained on, how many neural network nodes they have built into them, how precise all of the numbers are. So now I'm usually using like float 8s or float 16s, but they'll go up to float 32s or something. So those are all precision based things that you're going to get different, in theory, performance. A lot of them, though, are, you have like the core architecture of the network is going to be the real, like the innovative thing. And then if you want to really eke out the best performance, that's when you're going to have to use the larger models. So anyways, so the short answer is I'm not really sure. We'll have to kind of see what that looks like.
With the models you're currently using, like roughly how long does it take to do this?
This
Like in time?
so the longest thing is I guess that hour-long video did take transcribe probably 5 minutes to transcribe using just
Okay.
CPU. The entire model, like the entire, probably maybe takes 10 minutes for that hour-long one. I mean, for a 10-minute long video, it didn't even take a minute.
Okay, good. I had no
Yeah.
idea how long it took, so just some
Yeah,
reference
and
is good.
that's,
Thank you.
I would also say that there's also, it's kind of in the middle where let's see how it goes, because I think I have these two paths. I think there's a lot of other things we could do, and that we could analyze the video itself, look at frames, scene changes. So we could add more paths to this where it's getting different, each segment is being analyzed different ways. So that'll add time, right? But then there's also the idea that we could parallelize all of it, and that this is all very sequential at the moment. So that could cut the time in half, right? So it could go either way at the moment. Use larger models, different GPUs. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be tough to say.
Is there like a goal for like how quickly you would like to have things done or processed? Like kind of like a number that you have in your head where like, you know, it should take 10% of the time of the video or like whatever or something like
Yeah,
that, or just still too
still
early and you're just
working.
playing with it to see what it can do.
Yeah, it's too early, I think. It is interesting. This would be something that, so like Opus Clip, you could go and buy this service from them. And the way they do it is you upload your video, basically, all right, see you later. We'll send you an email when it's done. And so it's hardly an on-demand service. And you're paying for it. It's an active product at the moment. So it seems like processing time is a problem, right? So I don't know.
Well, that will definitely change in the next year. It's just, you know how computers work. So yeah, I was just curious to get
Sure.
some just rough idea, but
Uh-huh.
no, thanks.
In in this model of your flow chart of going down through these ways you're analyzing the video, is scene classification a metric or a part of that, or do you ever see that incorporated into providing better granularity on what's interesting?
It's not at the moment. I do think that would be a very interesting thing to do, though. Yeah, because intuitively, you think about that. It's you're watching a video and all of a sudden something changes, and like at that moment is often sort of an interesting thing. Um, yeah. Anyways, so if you're watching a soccer game, it's like most of us is people running back and forth, and when someone scores a goal, like the cameras change, everything sort of changes as it focuses on. You see replays. Yeah, those types of things would be really interesting.
Yeah, it's confetti
But
on the
yeah,
field all
so,
of a
sort
sudden.
sort of on the roadmap. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You got it.
Yeah. Um, Another question I had was around the priority of you said kind of these hour limits, and is long form content the goal for smart clips, being able to handle multi-hour videos. I mean, I watched a guy the other day who, if you just kept paying him, he would just increase the hour of his stream by another. Like if you gave him $5, he kept it going, and he ended up streaming for like 47 hours. Um,
Oh my god.
right? I don't
I hope
like.
we got more than $5.
Well, no,
No.
every hour was like $5, so I think he made like 47 times 5. Like he made like
Oh,
a couple $100. He didn't go to
I would
bed.
make it like exponentially more expensive.
He didn't go to bed for like 2 days, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Cool.
like that's a lot. That's a lot of content, right? And so
Hmm.
this would be something where you could say, as he's live streaming, you can pick up these highlights in 47 hours kind of bundled down to 1 minute, right? That would be super valuable. So is the goal to cater to long form content, or are you happy with the constraints of an hour long video right now, and we're just targeting 45-minute podcasts or something like that?
Yeah. I think that's all to be determined. So it'd be interesting to see how this is used. So we had um, StreamETH was one of our studio customers that they record the ETH conferences. And so they were kind of interested in this, but as I was looking at their videos, what they're primarily using clipping for is to split up 1 hour long session into its 4 different talks, the 15-minute talks. And that's not what this is going to do. So we're looking for like 30-second clips or something. But they were just trying to divide those up into different assets so that they could, when they post it, you could get specific talks and not, session, day 2, hour 10, sort of really broad. So as I was talking about, we thought this was a use case. It's not really great. That's not a great use case. I think it'll be interesting to see some of as customers. Well, and I think another thing that's interesting is that we also have, as really content creators. What am I trying to say? Or just like larger ones where they might actually do that themselves. I don't know. So there's a lot of use cases still left to be determined, right? So maybe, yeah, maybe it's just an hour. Maybe it's even just like 15 minutes. It'll be interesting to see who uses it, who wants it. So we're in that process. We have a lot of it's probably Q1 or Q2 before we even start to think about this, but then we'll be looking for partners to test it out, see if they're interested in it, how they might like it.
Yeah, very cool. I know that tape.xyz they do shorts and clips, and I know that shorts on YouTube right now are blowing up in popularity. They're getting extremely high viewership and engagement, right? And so, but again, these streamers are often, I don't know how, but they must be going through their 8 hours of content and clipping it out themselves and reviewing it, and it takes a lot of time. Whereas what if you could just have a webhook that just, hey, this was the most 2 interesting parts based on some threshold. We'll just throw those straight into a clip. Maybe you can review them before posting them, just in case you want to give it some more context by pulling it, one way or the other in duration. But
yeah,
that
exactly.
That would save so much time from like an editor's point of view, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's the concept.
Yeah. That's powerful. That's really, really cool. And that being said, it sounds like this stuff, I mean, maybe the transcribing of the video seems to be pretty easy, right? A CPU can do it pretty quickly, but maybe these other models, they do need that horsepower of GPUs. And so the Livpeer network gets to really jump in there and provide this ultra cheap power to do this work, right?
You got it.
Very cool. I like it. Let's open it up. Any questions based on any of this stuff? Does anyone else want to come in and ask a question? Feel free to speak up now. Or anytime, really. You can speak up anytime. But yeah, around the AI stuff or the engagement viewership, anyone have any questions or things they want to cover? Cool. Yeah, the last thing I wanted to ask Evan. Evan, anything you wanted to cover on the AI topic before we move on to one last topic?
No, it's great.
Cool. Yeah, so like another topic that I wanted to cover, which you didn't really mention, but it kind of popped in my head when you talked about viewership engagement metrics, was kind of this idea of like KPIs, key performance indicators. When it comes to like, do you track KPIs for the streams that come through Livepeer Studio? Do you like what do you track in terms of like performance, and where do you see things Livepeer being able to really optimize for understanding the data flow coming through the network?
It's a very good question. How do I start with this? So to start off, the first thing that comes to mind is some of the best data we have is on the VOD assets. So that really got us started from a KPI point of view, because it was like a chance to really build something and make sure we were collecting data on something. And also VODs are really nice because they have a perfect start and end. And so we had this idea of success, like it either works or it doesn't. It's a 0 or 1. And so we were able to really build out like how quickly do they need to be done? Are they transcoded perfectly? What are some of the other things? Did they work? How quickly? Then clipping is kind of a similar thing, generating clips. But streams are interesting because how do you define a bad stream, or how does a stream not work? And so I think on some point you have, okay, it's just an error, right? It's not working at all, but that's generally not it. It's somewhere in the middle where you're like, it's a bad transcode quality, or it's the latency is really high. What else? It buffers a lot. So some of those things are really hard to measure, and they're not binary. And there's a lot of different factors. Is it the server's fault or is it the network's fault? Do they have they have bad service on their phone, right? So that has been an ongoing challenge as we've tried to really develop that. And the other complicating factor is that there's not a great source of that data as well. Like Mist has the Catalyst outputs some metrics, but really understanding that and going through it has been something we've kind of struggled with, or we've tried to. A lot of this kind of exists, and so already there's logs. So there's that data. That data flow is not. It's just not the easiest to use, and so we have some things. We recently kind of like got a good latency score, and but one of the like errors and stuff like that, we're still trying to like really figure out the best way to measure it, because then sometimes there's real errors and then there's errors that are fine. So whenever someone's watching and then the stream stops, there's a 400 error, which is legitimate. Like the stream's not there, the stream is not available. So the client's going to get a 400 error when the HLS playlist runs out, right? So you just look at 400 errors. There's a lot of challenges there that we've really. So we do have some KPIs, but and then of course there's a lot of the server side stuff that I think that's more mature. Is like how many viewers do we have on a stream, and a lot of that we can measure internally, but working on how do you get that to the users. That's gonna, like, probably in Q1 we're looking at how do we improve our viewership engagement to also include some stream metrics. Right now it's mostly just VOD metrics. There's a caveat to that, but in general, how do you, like, real-time viewers? How many viewers is a stream currently having, or and what is their experience like in real time? That's our focus for Q1 for Studio. Is trying to get those metrics into the hands of our users. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer. I'm not sure if I answered. Feel free to clarify.
No, that's okay. I didn't really have a direction for that question. It was just something that popped into my head when you first were talking about the topics you wanted to cover.
Sure.
So, yeah, no, that was great. That was really wonderful. Cool. Evan, do you have any more topics that you would like to cover while we have you here? I know you have a hard stop in about 14 minutes, but is there anything you want to cover that we haven't covered so far?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm happy to take any questions, but
yeah, I'll open it up one more time. Anyone have any questions for Evan? Cool. What we'll do is we'll end it there. I know that gives you at least 10 minutes to get onto your next meeting. So, Evan, we really do appreciate your time to come in here and tell us what you've been working on and give us some insight into the cool things that are being built behind the scenes. So, yeah, it's just great to hear what you're working on, and thank you for taking the time to be with us.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Evan. Okay, right on. What we'll do now is we'll move on just to the rest of the water cooler chat, where we can go over some topics. So what I'll do is open it up now to anyone who wants to jump in and share a topic that they would like to cover. Yeah, please do so now. Don't be shy. Okay, well, we did do introductions at the very beginning of the thing, so but I'm not going to do introductions again here. I would like to cover one topic that I did mention at the beginning, which is the Livepeer Innovators DAO. So we do have our first submission for the Livepeer Innovators DAO. A project did submit. So what I'm going to be doing, I think, is going to be making that public, maybe in a forum post or somewhere where people can view the submissions ahead of time. I think it does two things. One, it allows people who are going to submit kind of look at other people's submissions and kind of gauge what information they're sharing and kind of maybe some, if they're thinking about doing something lazy, they can kind of look at what other people are submitting, and it gives some idea of to what they can put through. And the second thing is it gives the DAO an opportunity to kind of start reviewing what the submissions are coming through, so that when we go to vote on how much each project will receive, it's not just, hey, we're looking at 10 projects for the first time. We kind of have an idea of what's been coming through, and kind of keep those in our mind. So, and do research and let it percolate in our minds. So I think sharing the submissions is a good idea. I'm not sure if any other projects do that, but either way, we still need to do submissions for the big boys like tape.xyz and a lot of these other projects that are using Livepeer. So we're going to discuss that tomorrow in tomorrow's chat, which will keep it really, really short. Keep it like 20, 30 minutes. And we're going to talk about we're going to be following up on people's assigned roles, as well as assigning new roles for reach out. So that will be tomorrow's topic.
Hey Titan,
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
do you expect that your submissions are going to be when you get to a certain number of entries or a certain dollar amount requested, or is there a particular timeline? Like, what does that look like for these submissions?
For the submissions themselves, we want to there's a another item for tomorrow to maybe help with that is a deadline. So a round one deadline we need to come up with. I already kind of mentioned it was going to be, a 6-month round, and that was about 2 months ago. So I'm thinking, maybe in 4 months from now we'll have the deadline. So, and we have our first submission, so we can, maybe start amping it up now with getting more submissions in. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, so you're looking at 4 months from now. In 6 months you'll do the first round. So however many submissions you have, you'll submit them all at that time.
Yeah, so all the submissions for the round will be up for will be eligible for us to vote on, right? And the voting will take 2 weeks, kind of thing, and voting 2 weeks or whatever, however long it takes, and then the funds will get distributed on the 7th month. And we can discuss whether those rounds are too long or too short. The reason I kind of kept it long for the first one is the DAO has to fill up with funds, and so we're kind of waiting for those to accumulate a little bit. And also, this is brand new, so people don't know about the DAO. We haven't made content around it yet. We're still in the process of doing a lot of reach out. So, yeah. So anyway, we'll cover those topics tomorrow for about 20 minutes, and we'll assign roles and come up with a deadline, and share the current submission. So that'll be that. Yeah, so that's my topic. There's really nothing else to discuss from my end. Once again, I'll open it up a last time for the community. If you want to discuss any topics, please just mention them now. We can go into them.
Is there any active development going on past 0.7.1? Are there any key milestones or any releases that they're working towards, or is this just kind of if people submit issues and people fix them, eventually they'll cut a release? Is there some active plan for the next release? I'm just curious.
Well, that's a good question. And the answer is, I don't know.
I didn't expect you to know right now. I just didn't know, one, if anyone was on, or if maybe, if anyone heard anything about, what are some of the key things coming up. I know they had a technical roadmap, Doug presented. Just curious if there was any particular features tied to those roadmaps that are coming up in the next release. But I mean, maybe we can talk about that offline, see if we can get answers in the Discord.
Yeah. If anyone wants to answer that question, that'd be great.
I also had an unusual topic, and I maybe Papa Bear, you might chime in here. I've also started to see some weird like node issues where you're getting CUDA errors and then nodes are going down and being restarted. I'm not sure if any others are seeing the same problem. It doesn't seem to happen a lot, but I know a couple folks that were talking about that in the Discord. I didn't know if any others were seeing similar problems where their nodes were either restarting or they have to actually go in and physically restart it.
I've been seeing something with a transcoder process. I wrote down one error. I called it happened twice. And I recently started running two separate transcoders like I used to before Docker due to that. That way, at least, it can fail over, but if you have a transcoder totally, fail, you don't want to lose all the streams. That's something I'll try to get some more info on and post what I find. I don't think there's any GitHub issues yet, but it seems to happen like really heavy segments, would be my guess.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. It's hard to troubleshoot, especially when it happens, off hours and stuff. You can't really tell. But I didn't know if there was others that were seeing the same problem, or maybe it's just me. Maybe it's my setup.
No, I mean, I see it recently, like it'll happen like, maybe on a node or two for like a day, maybe 2 days, then it'll be okay, and then I'll see it happen again. Um, I uh, it looks like it's a similar error that I've seen pop up in the past, but again, it's never been attributed to anything that anyone's definitively said this is what the issue is. Um, I have noticed that if I'm running it in Docker, it just restarts, and you almost don't even notice it happen because it happens for it's restarted in less than a minute. But on nodes that are running binaries, it'll just crash the node and just sit there. So again, I probably don't catch them all. I mean, I do get a notification if the node's down for a minute plus, but a lot of times it happens within that minute. So it's a quick thing, but you definitely lose all the streams when it happens. I mean, if the node goes down. But it, again, unless you're sitting there watching it and, it doesn't happen in the middle of the night, it's kind of hard to really even see that it happened unless you really go back and start just kind of looking around for it.
Yeah, I haven't found the rhyme or reason behind it either. So like, it just seems to just be random, but I know it can't be just random.
My guess is it's either a particularly hard profile for whatever reason, but again, I don't have nearly enough data to lock it into one thing. You're talking about the one where it's like a CUDA error, then I
Yeah.
don't even remember a couple of random just lines kind of come up after it. Yeah, again, I'd probably notice it more if I was had binaries on all the machines because on that it will just that's it, it's done when that happens. Docker's definitely better about recovering from it.
Yeah, I'm seeing like a unable to initialize hardware decoder error, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. I'm trying to see if I have it anywhere, like if I actually saved it or. I don't think so. At least nowhere handy.
Yeah, I see it mainly if I look at monitoring, I'll see that the node restarted, or I'll get an alert if it's within a certain time period. But going back and getting the logs, it's almost like needle in a haystack for some of this stuff. Well, I'm
Yeah, again,
surprised that only a couple of us have experienced this, or at least maybe we've the only ones caught it.
yeah, so I get a CUDA error, and then it will go into it says unrecoverable state, and then it restarts the process. So not a lot of info. It doesn't. I don't notice that I have usually like it's not like I have a lot of streams when that happens. But again, I don't know what the particular load is. If it's like an on-demand stream that may just be using a lot of resources and not have a lot high stream count. But yeah, I wish I had more or better data on it. But again, I definitely have seen it creep up in the last week or so.
I guess you got a busted rig.
Yeah, well, again, this is something that if I searched around, I saw people have posted about the same error in the past, and there's never been a resolution to it, and it seems to kind of just go away. So I don't know if it's a particular profile or something that maybe is just I don't know what the reason would be. It would cause something to crash, but I've seen that in the past.
Well, folks see spikes in their streams and they see it drop suddenly. Maybe take a look in your logs and you'll see if you have the same problem.
Yeah, it did happen to me at 4 o'clock my time in Chicago, but I didn't go into the logs to look at it. I just saw it on my. I got a notification from Cloudflare that the node was down, so must have crossed over that 1 minute marker. I mean, it came back up within a minute, but it happened to be during the time where Cloudflare caught it. So I don't know if I would have realized it if it didn't get the Cloudflare alert. So I guess
everyone's logged into their dashboards now looking.
Yeah, I guess the key is keep an eye out for anyone, and if you notice anything that you can tie it into, please post it in the Discord. And
I got it 3 days ago too. I got a crack too.
Oh, you've seen it as well.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting.
Is anyone else having like a lot of ticket errors coming in?
No ticket error from my side,
Like I get
but I got a lot of them.
quite a bit across all my nodes.
I thought at one point we were told that they weren't important, but like I don't know, like, and the frequency and the volume seems to change. I stopped tracking it, to be honest with you. So yeah, you got me scared to even go look.
Well, I ran into one where I was actually getting not just ticket received errors, because I just ignore those, but ticket redemption errors. Is anyone having those? It kept saying, and I looked at the logs and it was like, ticket is expired. And I was like, did it really wait? Did 2 rounds already go by and it was just sitting in its little cache, like not redeeming the ticket? It seemed kind of weird.
Well, there was a post that you could go. I think Yandon wrote this. I'd have to go look for it, but he described like being able to like pull down the SQLite database that the SQLite database that the node has, and then you could like query, the table, the ticket table, and see if there were tickets in there that needed to be redeemed. Because it'll keep failing. Like if they're not redeemed, it'll start failing. Like it'll keep failing in your logs periodically. So maybe you just have a ticket that you didn't redeem, it's stuck. And, obviously it's probably too late to redeem it now, but at least you can clear those errors out.
Yeah, she gone. She gone.
She gone.
Are you continually getting that error still, though? You're still getting that error, or was it just something that... Okay.
I don't know what happened. I restarted the node and went away, and even that's gone. Like, everything's gone. Ticket's gone. Error's gone. Don't even know what the hell happened, right? So, yeah, just like, hey, wait to reproduce. Yeah, right. Like, maybe take another year to see that error, so I don't know.
Do you have a Grafana, like, how they have like in the dashboard there's a query you can grab? Is there a query you guys can share that shows the query for the errors received? Like you said, you see more, or are you just looking at your logs, or you have an actual metric?
Yeah, it's Livepeer ticket redemption errors. Is the
Oh
actual
wow.
here? Is the
Okay.
boom?
I'll take a look
You
at some
threw-
of the
that
error
is
metrics.
that is the if you got one of these, you're having a bad day. So yeah, you can put that into your browse metrics thing on your Grafana, and it will pop up. The problem is it'll always say like no data because almost never there.
Oh, it's only present when an error occurs.
Yeah, the actual line is like not there. It won't even tell you 0. So
We got to add that to the initialized 0. I can put a pull request in for that. I don't think it's been released yet, has it? Does
I
anyone know?
think
Like,
it has. I think it has been. It's in the master release. I don't know if it's in 071. I don't think it is in 071. Or is it? Yeah, no, it is. It's in 071. I think your release is in there. We'll have to double check it. But basically, what was happening with the metrics is like when you would restart your node, your tickets would be tickets one or similar that like if you're having redemption errors, like the metric just didn't exist at all. So Papa Bear put a pull request in to say, if the metric's not there, put a 0 in. So at least you always get the metric. So when you restart your node, your ticket count will say 0 instead of not being present. So he can do the same for this one.
Well, now that I have the metric, sure, I can have that. Sure, it's super high priority for them to merge that in, but yeah, I can have that in.
Anyway, small little
I can't even find my dashboard that has my payment errors. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I used to have one too. I told you I stopped tracking it. I really want to look at that now. I'm scared though. Titan has me scared. Everyone has me scared if there's errors like that going on. We get a lot more tickets now than we used to, so
yeah.
Well, I must have this somewhere because I know that when I think it was John posted about that he was getting a lot of errors, and then I was curious to see what mine looked like, and I was like, oh, I am too. And then we realized it was with the ticket view was too low too. So it was there were a lot of errors coming from tickets on multi-bit rate streams, and if your price was over I think it was like 300 or something like that. Now that said, I know I wouldn't have deleted that panel, but I just got a crazy long list of trying to find it. Either way,
wouldn't you be able to? Is it normal that we would see that number going up? Like, isn't there a way to identify why they're happening and fix them? Because like the more errors you see, isn't that tickets you should be accumulating, not failing? Like, is that a loss on a node side? If you're losing all those, if those tickets are going into error status, aren't you losing credit for your work, basically?
I don't know. Varys, do you know? I feel like you've commented on this once before, and I just don't know. It hasn't been a problem, so I just haven't paid that much attention to it. Well,
I think he went to say something and his mic wasn't working. He dropped off. He's gonna probably jump back in here.
I'm just clicking on all my different. Oh,
there he goes.
Sorry, go ahead,
All right. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess you're losing some value, but if you check your error rate, I don't know, maybe it's higher for you, but for me, it's like 0.1 or 0.2%. So I guess
okay.
matter that much in the grand scheme of things.
Well, I'm gonna check my rate.
All right. So just a question: if you have one unredeemed ticket, does it stop redeeming other tickets? Let's say you have a ticket stock and you get another one? Are they both stuck after that?
Depends on why it got stuck in the first place. Like if you didn't have gas, like if you didn't have any ETH to pay, then they would all get stuck, right? But if there was some other error, I mean, I don't know what the error would be, but usually there's no ETH, right? That's how a ticket would get stuck. If there's an actual error processing it, let's say you had an RPC error and it blew up, excuse me, and it blew up while it was processing, like your Arbitrum RPC, then I think it eventually would try it again and it should work. But I have yet to hear, unless it's a gas related, you don't have the ETH to pay the transaction. I don't see why one would be dependent on the other unless someone knows otherwise. Or an RPC error, that's the other part, right? If the RPC error, both tickets would fail for the same reason. Excuse me.
There we go. All right. Any other topics we want to cover?
I'll just, for the sake of the conversation, I'll point out I think I commented in the Discord that, I've noticed that folks are raising their price per pixel. And I've also noticed that as a result, the ETH payouts seem to be trending higher. So there's definitely some market movement upwards for prices. So make sure you adjust your nodes accordingly.
Yeah, I tried to make a blog post about that. Just trying to educate, just trying to get people to be like, hey, let's raise them up, raise the roof, raise the floor.
Let's go.
It's it started all with Frank's post about making price per pixel great again, which was probably the
awesome.
best post title of the year. So that was excellent, but it was a good segue into like, oh, okay, well here I made this calculator, maybe someone will look at it and be like, oh, hey, like I'm at 20 way per pixel, like this is bad idea. So yeah, just kind of.
Yeah, I think everyone's experimenting, right? I mean, people are out there trying it, and again, we said finding the sweet spot is the thing. And for myself, I just know that if I go lower, I can definitely get more work. But when I look at the value, I think Byers pointed this out last week. You look at the value coming in. Yeah, you're getting a lot more work, but you're not getting a lot of value when your price is low. And if you just move it upwards, you can start to say, I could be less busy with more value, or I can be more busy with less value. But in the end, it may equalize out. You just have to find out, would you rather have your GPU floored all day long, or would you want to balance that out and have more capacity? So it's cool to see people experimenting. I still haven't found a great spot, but I'm at least getting work and winning some tickets here and there. So
I wonder if they released their weights, if there was some sort of, math we could do that would figure out the maximum value per stream, per price per pixel, where it's like, if it's 70% price weighted and the weight is, works on this curve, then you could figure out that if you have this much stake, determining all that information.
yeah, but I don't know if it's a selection thing though, right? Like it's going to be when a given stream you're selected and you have a stream. I think the big factor in there is going to be your price and the number of pixels. So if you get 1080p, a 720p, and a 480p, you're going to be getting a hefty value for that, stream, right? But if you get a bunch of 480ps and, those things aren't going to give you as much value. So obviously your price is a big factor in that, but the number of pixels and I think the profiles coming in are going to give you is going to be the big determinant in how much, and this would be something cool. I think they could add into Livepeer would be like, how can an orchestrator turn down work, right? Like, how can I say there's not enough value here? Like, if the number of pixels are too low, I won't accept the work, right? Just because you only have a certain amount of capacity, and at your price, price alone is good, but being able to say, I'll do heavier pixel work, but I won't do some of these lighter transcodes that just seem to take up a lot of resource, but not a lot of value coming out. I don't know. That's just some things I've been talking about, thinking about.
Yeah, I've been thinking about using my optimum price script again. Adjust it based off the volume, because a floor is probably like 250 for me now, but I'd like to run up to 350 or something during peak hours, and play with that and see where the best sweet spot is, because it doesn't make sense if you start slowing down your transcode during peak hours because you're too low.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's hard to say, like, it almost has to be sort of like a rules engine to say, you could go in and say, if it's these days and these times, make it at these prices. But like, it's very hard to determine how to do it. Like, I think your script what was it doing? Like walking up the price as your stream count got lower or higher, rather, like as you got busier, you started to increase the price so that you can
Yeah.
still take streams, but you get more value. I think that's probably a good thing, but sometimes you're not going to want to do that, right? Like certain times of the day, it's just going to be low, and
Yeah.
certain days are going to be, certain times will be high, and you want to maximize your value. So be curious how you go about implementing that.
Yeah, right now it's got a dependency on the Prometheus reporting. It's where it's getting its info from, which is actually kind of a cool thing, because you could look at other metrics from Prometheus, like your GPU utilization. But my idea for it was to build it in Go so that you could actually maybe put it into side of Go Livepeer one day. And it would just, right now it runs off like a cron job. But yeah.
No, I think a sidecar is a good approach, though, right? Like if
Yeah.
you can leave Livepeer alone and let it do the transcoding, and if you could call like CLI endpoint APIs to manipulate the pricing, you could let some third-party service on your box like actually do the analysis and do the computation. Say, oh, okay, it's time to start lowering the price, and then start interacting with the CLI. That might not be a bad integration. Keep it loosely coupled, but
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I did notice, back to the ticket redemption errors or the payment ticket errors. I ran the query that Virus provided. I mean, I had seen those errors long ago, but I just started going back and seeing that it looks like on like November 15th, I started getting a lot more than usual. And there was a ticket EV number that was suggested at one point. I'm just curious what everybody's running their ticket EV at, or if what's the default.
10
just
was what they recommended, but we started to see there were problems at 10. So you had to, I think there was a change made to do 50 GUI is the number, right, for ticket EV now.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's the max you can use, and it's probably a good idea to run it.
Okay. I'll have to check the dates, but it almost feels like that was the date that I switched to using that.
And you've seen an increase since then, you said?
Yeah.
On that day.
I think I don't know if it was the same day that I changed that, but it seems like something, because it's been consistent for almost 2 weeks here. Well, almost a month now.
Oh, I'm gonna check mine.
I mean, they're very small. I mean, I guess this is 0.005, but it's just about doubled in the time.
Well, you are getting more tickets too. So,
Yeah, you're getting millions of tickets, right? Like if you look at the number of tickets, the total number of tickets go up, hundreds of thousands a day now, right?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to
Whereas,
see what
you
other
get
folks do.
3,000, 4,000 in a day in the past. Now you're getting 100,000 in a day or more, 200, 300,000.
I've tracked the error rate, and it actually increased by 30 to 100x at the day that they increased the ticket EV. And then I think they lowered it again, right? I think it was at like 300 before, something like this. Now it's 50.
It was
So,
oh,
or what? Yeah.
I think it was the other way. I think it was lower, and then now it's higher, but it's still,
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean, it's a
exactly.
lot
Yeah,
lower
right.
than it used to be. Yeah.
Like since then, the error rate is decreasing again for me. I mean, my formula tracks the last 30 days, right? So it makes sense that it decreases if it gets better.
Yeah, I do see it going down over time since the spike. Well, that's good to know. I'm not the only one seeing that.
Right on. Cool. Well, if we any last topics?
Has anyone tried to run like the latest version of Studio locally? Had any challenges with that? Just curious.
I haven't. I've been waiting for someone else to post, or like there were so many local host entries when I was running it the last time that I just said, if he's gonna work on that, then I'll wait and see how that part looks, because it was just too much. Like I tried to run it on a server, and it was just everywhere I turned it was a new place, and I just waited. I'm just gonna wait.
Yeah.
But I know you made some progress there, but
Yeah.
are you still stuck, or?
So I had everything working for a bit there, and it seemed to be using a really old version of Studio. I don't know if that was done on purpose, but it worked. And then I recently just updated to the latest commit head on all of the Catalyst repositories. And Catalyst API runs great, but Studio, as much as I've gotten it to work, there's just little quirks. Now it's asking for a Google CAPTCHA API key, and even when I provide that, it doesn't work. And some kind of seems like the login form is based off some third-party resource. So as the more I started thinking about it, I mentioned Dob. I remember Dob mentioned it would be nice to have a Web3 login for Studio. And I was like, actually, that'd make it a lot easier to develop on too. To have an option that doesn't use that third-party login form.
Yeah, I remember setting up Studio a while back. I tried several times, and the amount of accounts you got to create, like CAPTCHA API keys, and like all these different things that you have to do. I just remember it being so painful.
Yeah, I was digging through the Postgres database last night, just trying to see what modifications will be needed. But that's something I'm looking at trying to accomplish, just so I can get logged into it. Really, I might try to hack around a bit more and see if I can get logged into it without too much development effort. But I mean, from what I've read, like Web3 MetaMask login is super easy. You just have to add the nonce ID to the database or something for the user.
Well, the thing I always felt like with Catalyst that's missing is like the big picture. Like, what are all the components that are involved in this box, right? It's great you have a box of everything's in it, but like, what are the components in there? What ports do they use? What protocols do they use? How do they interact with each other? Like, being able to understand these things at a high level so that you could look at it and say, oh, okay, localhost here makes sense, but maybe it should be something else. Maybe you need a CDN DNS on this entry. Like, being able to understand that deployment, the topology, just having a component architecture so we can look at it all. Like, even you were saying you're digging into the database. Well, they created the database, so why don't you have like ER diagrams of the database model? You know what I mean? So that somebody designed it when they implemented whatever code they're using it for. So where are the docs? Where are those models that you can go look at these things where you don't have to go dig in yourself and build them yourself? So like, just being able to document what's in the box at a high level can get a lot more feedback from us, because then we don't have to like spend our time like, putting the puzzle together ourselves.
Yeah, there's a lot that could be done there. The Livepeer Catalyst API, I think, is where the database runs underneath that. I'm not sure. There's actually a couple database instances on different technologies in there.
Postgres,
So,
Cockroach, like, they got an MQ server going on, like RabbitMQ. I mean, there's a whole lot of moving parts here. And, when you look at a deployment in production, it's not going to be on one server, right? Like your database is going to be on a, Aurora or, whatever. Maybe you're running your own hosted Postgres, but then your messaging queue is going to be here and your web server is going to be there. And, like all these pieces are in one big thing. And it's great for, small little demos and stuff. But beyond that, it's got to get, those things need to be broken out into pieces. And I think that was my recommendation to Eli was let's get a Docker stack that has each of these pieces that come up on their own. Like, you can see, oh, MQ's here. Oh, this is here. This is there. Like all these different pieces that fit together. And that in itself gives you a high level overview.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I definitely like the idea of having the UI separate if you're doing Docker containers at least. So that's kind of the approach I'm looking at. But yeah, it is a lot of stuff in one box. But
that's right.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get it to where it'll actually stream on the Livepeer network and get it set up on a server with a demo app or something. Maybe it's not even Studio. Studio is just to help me learn how the Catalyst API is being used.
Yeah,
and there's
yeah,
other
that's
things
the other
like
part is those things like Swagger or like openAI docs for that
exactly.
API. If you have like openAI docs for the Catalyst API, then you can just go look at an existing running message and say, oh, okay, here's the openAIs. I can go in and use every single API directly. Like every field that comes in, every value that comes out. It's just like baked into the API itself.
I think that's what we need for Catalyst. That would be the best way to approach it, is some self-documenting Swagger type of UI that pops up.
That's right.
And it would just expose that separate page and show you the documentation for everything that it does.
I mean, it takes discipline to keep it all in there, to get it there. But once the pattern's in place, and it becomes, a nice, easy way to produce your docs and your code together, and they go together.
That's a great idea. Yeah,
We
good
got
discussion.
ideas, man. I just wish I had time to build.
Yep. Same here.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you're still in there banging on it, dude. That's great.
I was poking around with it all weekend, but it's been going on for about a month. Just struggling with it. But back to a point where it's moving forward. I just let's just redo this login screen if someone would let me. I'll model it up and see what we can do. But yeah, if you've seen the new sort of off top of it, the new .NET 8 Blazor template in Visual Studio is pretty sweet. And I know we don't have any Livepeer SDKs for C# yet, but that's kind of a strong point for me. So I'm hoping to build sort of a demo app with that type of a platform. And I don't know, maybe it becomes an SDK or something. But
yeah, that's cool. I was looking at doing some stuff in Rust as well. I'm a Rust kind of guy, so I've been wanting to like rewrite the transcoder in Rust, and just being able to do that at a because that stuff can be real efficient, real low level. So time.
Yeah, it would be super interesting to see if if you had like a browser-based broadcaster. But I mention it all the time.
Yeah, well, I'm still working on my I want to be the number 2 broadcaster, even though Xenon kind of beat me to it. But I still want to be, getting some broadcaster in the hands of the public so that anyone can use it, and it pays into it transcodes into the public network. Like, I feel like that's a huge way to bring demand to the market, is allow others to use it.
Yeah, I mean, like I registered a broadcaster the other day. I think it was.
Is that you? I saw somebody in there
There was a few others, I think.
deposits and withdrawals and doing some stuff. That's cool.
It was like 0.04 ETH I put for both deposit and reserve, but I was just looking at what other people had put in. I didn't try to go any lower. But that would be so neat. If you have your Web3 login as a user, you can register to pay for broadcasting fund, fees, and then just broadcast off that ETH address. If Catalyst could do something like that, or Studio could do something like that, that would be really cool integration. Then you have,
That's
instead
great.
of a handful of broadcasters on the network, you kind of have a broadcaster for every user almost, maybe.
Yeah, nah, browser-based stuff. If that's how if you're going to stream that way, that's definitely a nice model to try to target. I still struggle with like who's doing what, how, you know what I mean? Like what users are doing it. I started playing with Owncast. I think I mentioned it,
Mhm.
Owncast. If you go look, they have like this online directory where people are streaming on this directory page. Like they spin up their own like VPS and run their server, but it's all like, transcoded on the box. So you have to have a hefty box if you're going to be doing it. But like that product, getting those streamers onto Livepeer, that would be like, you know, to me, those are real customers. They're using it right now. You know what I mean? And getting them onto the network, that would be, and it's open source software. So being able to get them on is a, not an easy lift, but it's a lift that you can get measurable amount of additional minutes added onto the network.
Yeah, I've been thinking about integrations like that. I mean, that's a whole different track of work from Catalyst if you really think about
Oh
it.
yeah,
You know,
it's in
there
addition.
exactly. I was thinking about Plex TV server for some reason the other day. I think somebody told me somehow they were making money running Plex servers for some network or something, but they do have to do transcode. I
Yeah.
was looking somewhere on the Rock 5B, and someone had posted what's some good media server software for the Rock 5B. I remember the old Xbox Media Center. You could mod your Xbox and you could do stuff with it, and I guess it transcodes so that you can play it on your TV or from other
Yeah, I
devices in
have
your
Plex.
house.
I have Plex at my house. I run a Plex server and I have a
Yeah.
GPU on it. And it
Yep.
basically, if I'm on my phone and I'm out and on the go, it'll transcode it down to my phone size, right? But if I'm at home on my TV, it's gonna give, max output. So, but yeah, no, those are the things that I look at is let's not bring the users to Livepeer. Let's bring Livepeer to them. You know what I mean? Meet
Yep.
them where they are instead of trying to get them to come to us. Like we gotta go to where the tools are and the tech that people are using and get creative with ways to integrate. Like get our tech into their stack.
It's a really great approach. Totally agree with that.
Well, I'm going to be working on an SPE. Like this is all new, and I've been, researching it. But I'm definitely trying to get something off the ground where it's a public broadcaster, and I'm going to need a lot of people's support to get this kind of idea off the ground. But I think getting that public broadcaster in place allows you to get these integrations with these technologies without the Web3 interaction. If you know RTMP and you know HLS, you can interact with the broadcaster and you can use that with integrations. And you don't need to be an expert in Livepeer, but you still can add to the network. Public broadcaster, it's like PBS, baby. Let's go.
Dude, I like that. I like that idea. I definitely like to help out with that type of thing. And the more we do these integrations, it becomes like dog fooding. We get to see what end users are having trouble with, and then improve that from a network perspective.
Yeah, I got something running right now. It's still in its like alpha stages, and I'll share it in the Discord at some point. But still, really kind of basic. But um, it's definitely along those lines. To your point, is start using it. Let's get our water cooler on there. Let's start moving these things into it and get these minutes, get them onto the Transcode network, baby, all of them.
I love it.
Cool. I think Titan, we
Titan's still
hijacked
there.
it the last 20 minutes. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's our personal conversation with John and myself. So
It's all good,
John and
man.
Mike
anyone jump
show.
in.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Well, what I'll do is I'll end it there then. I do appreciate everyone being here, making Livepeer the world's open video infrastructure. And yeah, we will see you all next week for a demo. We have another Q&A session next week for a demo. And then we got 2 water cooler sessions off because it lands on New Year's or Christmas Day and New Year's Day. So we're going to be skipping those 2. So yeah,
We'll have an
what
action-packed
demo?
one ready to go, man. So we're gonna be we're gonna have like a 2-week withdrawal. We're gonna come back like, you know, crazy nuts.
What demo do we have?
I will put it in the announcements, and you'll see it soon.
Oh, okay, sounds good.
Little teaser.
Yeah, yeah. I would look at it to give you an. I actually have to go through my messages and figure out exactly what the deal
All
is.
good,
But
all good.
yeah, I'll that'll be
Cool,
for next
man.
water cooler. So we'll end it off on the year strong, and then come back next year revitalized. So thank you all for coming, and we will see you all next week. Cheers.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.